Well, my name is MaPó Kinnord. I actually got into Ghana or looking at Ghana via the book by Margaret Courtney Clark, which was um, African Canvas, and it showed the architecture of northern Ghana. And it's like somebody says, "Hey, your artwork looks like that." And I'm like, "Yeah, wow, this is this is amazing." So I had to go. So when I was in graduate school, my first year of graduate school, I was trying to get there. And so the second year I was able to go. And there was a conference that was actually happening in Ghana. So this was 1992, I believe, which is probably before some of your students were born. Um, and Maya Angelou was actually at this conference and she gave a talk, and it was about, it was a general conference in Accra. So that was very, that was, sort of kickstarting me being interested in getting introduced into the culture and some of the history. And we had talks. And I'm looking forward to KUST sponsoring another conference, of artists. That would be so wonderful for us to have a conference in Ghana again to talk about the importance of ceramics and how it can function. Because these days you have a lot of folks are doing houses, architecture, using literally those machines that kind of squirt out um, layers pretty similar to the traditional architecture that's in the north. So, did you want me to do a screen share of images? Because, looking at me is not all that exciting.
Yes.
Let me see let's see. Okay, let's see if I can do, you're gonna have to let me be able to, because,
Okay, 1 second.
and then I can kind of pull up something that I have here.
No, that's not it.
So, I literally went to Ghana fairly cold and just took buses. If you can imagine back in 92, the road from Kumasi, road from Accra to Kumasi was rough, and the road from Kumasi to Bolga was brutal. I mean, it just literally rattled my teeth almost out of my head. So I just took, you just take the bus with everyone, and it was pretty amazing. Let's see. So I'm going to share this is kind of this is, oh shoot, my goodness, oh my goodness. Sorry, I have something up and then it disappears. Hold on, let me stop sharing for a second. Let me see if I can get it back on. So the whole point was to really check out what was happening in the north and to be able to see the artwork there. Let me try one more time to pull up this document. Um, Sorry about that. I had it all queued up and then I made it disappear. Um, let's see. Sorry about that. I'm gonna have to go back. Let's see. I've got to stop and then stop it again. Sorry about that. Um, so my experience really was to try and meet people and see what I can, see what I can learn. And so most of the time I spent was just going and then finding people who could tell me where, where the potters are. Okay, I think I can do it now. All right. So this is just an example of some of my functional work. This is oddly enough, this image is from 2005 when I was in Swarthmore during Katrina. I live in New Orleans, and during Katrina, I couldn't be here. And so I ended up going to Swarthmore. And because I have a history of doing functional ceramics, this is an example of some of the functional ceramics that I do. This was basically a porcelain workshop. So my thing is about throwing, and I was a production potter for a long time, and that's really where I kind of cut my teeth in terms of working with clay. And then later on, I branched off into doing more sculptural work. So this form in particular and some of these other forms start to talk about architectural spaces. And so some of these pieces before actually at the bottom are pieces that well, these two pieces I made before I got to Ghana. And so talking about the edges of it, talking about landscape of architecture. And so how to blend this idea of architecture and landscape together, which is what the architecture of Northern Ghana does. The interior of some of these spaces, I got to, I work it so that this series is called the Shrine series. So as you look through one opening, you'll see another area that you can't possibly see from another angle. And oftentimes when I make my sculptures and I make these elaborate interiors, they're kind of like references to people. You see this outside, you see this facade, and it's really the stuff that's on the inside, kind of like a pot, the stuff that's in the inside is what makes it functional. And for these pieces, the meanings of the work, you have to take the time to look inside and check them out. And so this piece I made after my first trip to Ghana, and in this inside, if you could, I don't know if I can I enlarge this um a bit. Inside is an image of Mama Yamga, who was the grandmother of some, well, she was the mother of Francis, a person that I met there. And this is images of the family. So, and the spirits at the top of the piece that I drew to act as protectorants. So that when you look inside, it's kind of dark, and this is the source of the lighting. So there's a transparency that lights the inside. But what you have to do is you kind of have to stay in there for a few minutes so that your eyes adjust, so that those images start coming into view. And again, it's this idea of, making people slow down to look. We look so quickly oftentimes, and we look at the surface of things. And so the whole point of my work is to invite people to take a little bit more time and to look a little bit closely and to look on the inside of the work. And oftentimes it's funny because I've had shows where I've had kids, because they're oftentimes at the height, right? At the perfect height for a person either in a wheelchair or a young person could see. So taller people like myself, we have to bend over and look. We have to put a little bit more effort into it. And so oftentimes the kids will go, "Oh wow, this looks cool." And then the adults will bend down and look. Um, sometimes I will incorporate poetry and words. So to a certain extent, when I make my artwork, I can, I can sort of pull together all of my interests, in writing and in photography and in going places and meeting people and physically creating these spaces and, later some of the other works, a lot of mixed media. When I got to New Orleans, I actually started being impressed by the whole idea of improvisational shapes and improvisation, which is a jazz thing. And so, creating these forms that just sort of, I don't know what they are. And I just, using the coil technique, I just go up and up and up, and this goes this direction, this goes directions, and just seeing what my hands will make, and so part of it is the engineering aspect of it and getting it so that it'll stand up and that it'll work, but that there is a flow to the form. So, for me, I like challenges. in creating. And so, and then the surface of this is actually painted with acrylic paints, and then I draw on the outside, which actually turned out to be kind of interesting because the person who bought this piece broke it. And they gave it back to me. They said, "Can you fix this?" And I'm like, "Can I?" And because it wasn't glazed, I was able to fix it, which was interesting. Sometimes I do figurative work, and this was a piece that talked about my African heritage. This is really inspired by the work of the Mende, um, uh, sculptural mass. And then the back of this, so this is the opposite side of the piece, which is sort of like it's a figure that's sort of in mourning to a certain extent for the loss of that connection between, the traditions that I would have, or oftentimes we would have grown up with, um, had we been born in Africa at a different time. I love the tradition of passing on information in a more formal way other than, we have high school, but there's not a ceremony, there's not a celebration of, learning to grow up, learning to become whatever it is that you are, a man or a woman, or your place in society, getting that training. I also love to draw, and this is some images of my drawings, whether I'm doing more, representational stuff or abstraction. So, I grew up drawing, and that's something that I always loved. So this is kind of this these images are kind of like what I show, my folks who have absolutely no idea where Ghana is. And so I give them an understanding of where it is. And so I was in Bolga, Bolgatanga way up here. So it was quite a little trek, and to stop in Kumasi, hang out there, spend a little bit of time in Tamale, and then up to Bolga. And this is the family, the Inaba family. And this was actually back in 92. So it's interesting because this is Linda now, and now she's graduated from KUST in social work, and she actually she runs a women's organization, an empowerment organization. She's awesome. And Carol, who wasn't even born at this point, she is going to med school. So when I got up to Bolga, or Zare, which is the little town just outside of Bolga, met the chief, and it was really great to document this because now a lot of these folks have passed away, and it was nice to be able to give the people in the community these images for their records. And so it was these shrines that were very much inspirational to me. This idea that, I had been making shrines in America, subconsciously. What we call it is ancestral memory. This idea of we are, some of this stuff is sewn into us, and put the right materials in your hands and you just it comes out. And so these shrines are very much a part of, I felt like a part of my cultural heritage. And so, of course, these are the male and the female shrines that were outside of the compound. And so I wanted to create a project where, I could go up to Bolga and help promote what they do and to be of some service. And so this was the Inaba family compound at the time. And while I was there, we were sleeping up at we were sleeping up at the roof because it was pretty hot. And this is actually the one of the structures inside of one of the structures that we ended up building a few years later. And this is Carol. She was born, I think, in 2002. And so this sort of I did a video of the construction of of the traditional boenga that they have in the north. But it was great to just go there, and all of these women were potters, and they had a great sort of gathering for me, and I got to meet some of the Polka and some of the women that were up north, and they all had their specialty, as you know, whether it's cooking pots. Veronica was interesting because she, had her own style. She had her own interpretations of a number of different styles. And so she was a really amazing potter. And in fact, I think I bought this work and still have it to this day. And so, you guys are familiar with the water pots because back then they did, they had a well and you had to store your water. So that was their specialty, these large pots that were just incredible. And the fact that people could, walk around, that they were light enough, but, and well made enough to last years and years in the community. One of the things that I wanted to witness was the firings. And so this was the firing of some bowls that they had. And I asked the women what they wanted, and one of the things that they wanted was a kiln because these firings, although they were very functional, they would, if it started raining, they would lose a lot of things. So they wanted to have a kiln like, they have at the center in Kumasi. But there were no bricks. And so I literally had to pick up some bricks in Kumasi and bring them up to Bolga and drop them off and say, I'll be back. We'll be back to build the kiln. And so Daniel Bing, who was a student, and I don't know if he's still in Kumasi, but he was a student at KUST back in the old days. We call him the old G. And so he came up to Bolga with us to
Is
build
that Daniel
their,
Kobler?
pardon?
Is that Daniel Kobler? Oh,
Daniel Obing.
do you, Obey. Oh, yeah, Daniel Obey. Okay.
So he was recommended to me by a Woony. Woony said, "Hey, Daniel was a master kiln builder, so take him up."
Oh, you know
So,
Winnie.
oh yeah, Woony. Oh yeah. Uh, he yeah, because he's from the north.
Yes,
Uh,
he's from the north. Yes, it's
but
retired now. It's
yeah, I know he's been retired for a while now.
yeah.
So we went up there to build the kiln and so this was like 2 years later. I was able to get back up there. And Daniel did a great job in the community. So I brought two students from Skidmore and Sid Carpenter from Swarthmore. And so the four of us went up to be a part of this process and to help fund it. So, and he's, showing off, of course, his his art skills. But they were eager to learn how to make a kiln. And even though he didn't speak Frafra, which is, what they're speaking up there, we were able to get this kiln built. It was interesting. This was after it got resurfaced, but before even we resurfaced it, we decided to, try it out. And Mama Yamga was the first to, uh, get a load of pots in. And it's funny because Daniel wanted to load the kiln. We fired it twice. And Daniel loaded it the first time. And then the second time, the women say, okay, we got this. We'll load the kiln. And the women loaded the kiln. And this is how they loaded it. And they got mega pots into that kiln. Uh, he was surprised. And these are all the pots that fit into that one firing. So that they were able to get, I don't even think we lost any. I think maybe we may have had one crack or something like that, but for the most part, it was a really good kiln. And it was a really good firing. Uh, the kids kind of got into the act of being architects. And that was the other thing that we did is while we were there, um, we did you did a construction and I went back up later to do a sculptural piece that I wanted to try and do that I could literally be in. And so this was a sculptural piece that I made that, was basically a little chicken coop, a large little chicken coop for all practical purposes. And the women helped and sort of later took over. But there is a video of actually making a whole traditional house that I was able to document. And so, but this sort of sculptural piece was fun to do. And the whole experience of just being up there and hanging out and being with the kids and the funny the dogs. But that's it. I actually have a lot of images from KUST and the artwork that the students had created each time I've gone. And but it was a wonderful experience and I'm hoping to, get back there again. My latest trip was though in South Africa to visit Ardmore Ceramics, which is a whole different a whole different experience. But that's it. If you guys have any questions.
Well, I'd like to say something, and one thing is that Sam just said, Winnie, and I want to tell you, Sam, that we all know each other. We're all sisters in this big world of clay, and we're martyrs in Sika and have been going for over 40 years. And we hold hands and share community and love each other very much. All of us know each other, Sam, all of us. So what I didn't say today to introduce you, MaPó, is that we go beyond being women friends, beyond being feminists, beyond being clay artists. We are deep, deep, deep sisterhood friends, and you are a kinship to me. And what you have done for me, little Sana, over the years is deeply, deeply, deeply appreciated. And I love you and respect you dearly. This is my first time seeing your work. It's you that I loved all this time. And now I love your work too. Thank you so much for joining my Ghanaian family this morning. Let's see if we have some questions from anyone. Anyone? And also, I lived in Mindyland in 1974 for 1 year. So Akai Boma is good morning. Yeah, I lived with the Mende people.
Oh, one other image I guess I wanted to share too was when I talked a little bit about the interiors. This is the interior of another piece, and so you can kind of see how elaborate they can kind of get in relationship to what I put on the inside. The outside, and I've done collaborations with other artists. Like I will make a piece and another artist will paint the outside. I would love to do a workshop of that actually to be able to make a work and then, complete it with other folks, do a collaborative. So this was another work. And again, if you look on the inside, this opening, this is what's on the inside. So they can be, and this is another aspect of that same piece. So oftentimes, my interiors are getting more and more mixed media elements. But this whole idea of having this space on the interior of a sculpture that is an opportunity to explore.
Do you make connections to the body with your forms?
Yeah, I mean, if you can imagine your chest, and this thing and I think too, it's funny because I was looking at my work in my studio, and when I look at it, they seem inflated. The forms of themselves as if they, were pumped with air because there is this idea, to a certain extent, like them taking a breath.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're very bodily for me when I look at them. Very much so. Very, very beautiful.
Well, that's our first home. You know, your mom's body is your first
Right.
architectural
That's right. Your temple.
experience.
It's your
It's
temple.
inside them hips.
That's right. They're very, very strong, beautiful sculptures that reference so much the body, and I love the interior speaking to me at the same time that the exterior does. Very beautiful work.
Thank you. Yeah, I have fun.
How many years more will you put in before retirement?
I'm setting to retire in 27, 2000. So this is literally just like 3 more years.
Or years?
I'll probably teach part-time because
Yeah.
I still love it, but so I can focus in on my artwork
Mhm.
and what I do. Um, to kind of here, I'll tell you what. I'll give you a little bit of a tour to a certain extent. A friend of mine sold me this house, so I was able to um get a place that actually has a studio. It's a little bit so my studio is literally right here, and I'm working
Mhm.
on a piece. You may recognize some Adinkra symbols back there. My
Yeah.
husband,
Yes,
uh,
yes,
Mark,
yes, 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 yes. In
made
fact,
the rail.
I didn't know you were so connected to Ghana. I didn't know this.
Oh yeah, I mean, we have my eye, and then of course, which is Egyptian. The um
Mhm.
wisdom, and then Sankofa, of course, and then the sun and moon and unity and Jiname, and at the very end is actually my dog. I have a really good dog. But
I,
yeah, these are my studio
Mhm.
where I'm working
yes.
on a couple of pieces. Got a few
Mhm.
pieces in progress, and so this is my funky studio, and I've got artwork from other artists in New Orleans. And
Mhm.
oh yeah, and I have there's an artist that's in Tamale
In
who
Tamale.
a fabulous painting. I don't know if I can put it up, but it's an image of Kwame and Nkrumah,
Yeah,
and let's see, I don't know how I can do a better image of it. And some of the sign paintings that you'll probably recognize.
yeah.
But he's an
That's
incredible painter. And so I have a
yeah.
collection of his images of Barack Obama. And this was actually before he became president. Um,
Oh, okay.
and so I have collections of artwork from some of the artists that are the
So,
sign
so
painters.
your house is just like a museum. I can see a chop bar. I don't know
Oh,
whether
yeah,
Anna
great.
can. I can see a chop bar. I don't know whether Anna and Sana can relate to that. And a cold
Mhm.
store. I see a cold store at the
Mhm.
top, right? I think my students have some questions for you. I think they put it on the chat. Maybe
Right.
if Sana will allow
Oh,
them to ask
okay.
those questions.
Oh, yeah, I just see the chat now. Sorry about that.
Hmm.
Let's see. What aspects of African history influence my practice? Yeah, I mean the functional work and definitely the architecture of northern Ghana. Um, Mostly because some of that architecture is disappearing. It's such a labor intensive process to, make some of the traditional housing. And it's kind of a shame that, cinder blocks are kind of replacing that. So, if the architecture of Mali and the Dogon and structures that really talk about that are made of the earth. If we can get back to that, I'd be a happy woman. Um, let's see. As you can see, of course, in my background here, I have you know artwork from the Bamana and the Dan and Sanufu, and so the West African sculptures are very much a part of my, I love the aesthetics and their meaning. This whole idea of ritual of celebrating, either celebrating harvest, celebrating, rites of passage. The work that I did when I was in Ghana was to just like we repaired some houses while we were there, just in terms of sort of teaching people the construction method and actually being of some use to the community. But I didn't work. My stretches were only like 5 weeks at a time, and a good part of it was traveling. So I wasn't, really working. And but it would be great to do like an exchange, somebody teach coming here to teach my classes and then me going there. But yeah, but I wasn't working while I was there.
So, where are you working now? I missed the introduction. Sorry, I was in the meeting,
Oh,
so I
I did a terrible job of introducing myself. I teach at Xavier University of Louisiana. It's a HBCU, which is a historically Black college. So I'm here in the South, and so Louisiana is as far south as you can get without, being in Jamaica or Cuba. We're right on the Gulf Coast of the United States, and so and I live in New Orleans, which is a pretty unique city. It's probably the most African city in the United States in that during the time of enslavement, there were places like there's a place that exists in New Orleans called Congo Square, and it's an area outside of the French Quarter, which is where the enslaved people were allowed to practice their African traditions on Sundays, only on Sundays. And so they were allowed to, do the traditions of dance and music. And so as a result, some of those traditions have stayed. And so there's a very strong connection to West African culture. And a particularly strong influence is the Yoruba, because of the practices of traditional Yoruba religions with the Orishas, and so it's not uncommon for someone to to be to speak Yoruba and to be really familiar with the traditions and actually to go back to Nigeria. In fact, my niece is a priestess of Ife, so she's gone back to Nigeria even though she's in Ohio. So there are lots of, there's a lot of Americans, a lot of African Americans who make it a point to solidify those connections. Mine as a ceramic artist is, uh, kind of, through the material more than any kind of other cultural practices. My if I have to give any advice to students is to let your own voice, be patient enough to let your voice come through your work and get in touch with your intentions in terms of what do you want your work to say. It doesn't have to be didactic, but I think unless you're continuing a tradition, a functional tradition, when you start getting into sculptural work, what are the one thing that I thought was really amazing about the work I saw from the students at KUST is that they were oftentimes looking at natural elements of their environments, whether it's the animals, architecture, fruit, you know, uh, so oftentimes, my thing is like look around you. Whatever it is you're surrounded by and whatever it is that you get your energy from, use as a source for your work. And I say a source, not necessarily in image, but sometimes in concept. What does that work do? How does it function? And how can your work reiterate that function?
I wanted to ask, in her studio, I found out that she has a studio in her house, right? How
Yes.
does she fire the work? Do you have a kiln there?
I lost my kiln during Katrina, so what I do, I have my front door is like right out into the street. I don't have a front porch, which most houses do. So my house, I literally can like drive my I don't drive my car, but I like back my car to the front door and just slide them in either a truck or the back of my car and take them to school. And I take them when they're leather hard so that they can dry at
Right.
school.
Perfect, perfect.
But yeah, I
And
don't
do you
have
sell?
I don't have a kiln big I don't have a kiln big enough to fire the work that I'm firing now. So
But your kiln was before it got damaged in your residence.
I had a smaller kiln where I would do smaller works in
Yeah.
my studio. But oftentimes, yeah, anytime I did big works, I always took them to school
Right, yeah. But
because the firings always took, so long, and
long,
I don't
right,
have I don't have a proper permit
yeah,
to do a big kiln.
yeah.
Although I do want to do, I'm trying to convince someone not too far away from here to build a big kiln.
Mhm. But Sam, to that question, to elaborate on it, many of my friends have kilns in their homes on a 240 line, which is the same line as an air conditioner. They have their kilns,
Oh, okay.
Scott kilns,
Okay.
many of us, and my kiln is also not only in my basement, but in the studio outside. So we do have them in our home. We just put the proper ventilation. And
Okay.
like with Lydia's house, her studio's in her basement, she has what you call damp cloths so that she doesn't carry the clay through her house when she's walking. So we find ways of domesticating it, but I also, all my big pieces have to be fired at Hunter or John Jay because my kiln just is not,
It's
30
big
inches and that's it. That's it. But anyway, that's why I'm doing residencies. But I'm going to let you go, MaPó, because I know that you have a lot of things to do. We don't have any more
Well,
questions.
now that it's an hour earlier, now now I'm good. This is perfect.
Well,
What's the time in the US now?
well, she's in
For
New,
me, it's almost 10 o'clock. It's 5 minutes to 10.
and
So
for us, it's 5 minutes to 11 in New
yeah.
York, Eastern.
Okay. And it's 5 minutes to 3 here.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Mm.
All right. Well, have a happy afternoon and a good evening.
Thank you so much for
Thank you
organizing
very,
this.
very much, MaPó. Love you.
Thank you.
Oh,
Bye-bye.
you're welcome. Medase. Medase P.
Medasi. Medasi P. Medasi P.
Bye-bye, Sam. Bye-bye, students.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.